All right, welcome back everybody to Stars and Story. We are here diving into the astrology of this time, specifically connecting these stories about the Cailleach with the astrology dynamics that exist within Aquarius. Today, we're going to be talking about the Cailleach as the tender of the wild and the sovereignty of the land. And Otis, do you want to share how you're going to be tying in astrology?
I am going to be just reflecting on this story about sovereignty and how Aquarius as an archetype holds sovereignty of air, and go into that a bit. I'm very excited.
Me too. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So, listeners, I invite you to get comfortable. You can start to direct a little bit of loving energy towards your body if that feels good and right, and come into awareness of whatever is holding you, a chair, perhaps lie down, and just be here to listen. So, this story is from the Niall of the Nine Hostages and from the McNeil family dynasty. And in this story, there are 9 siblings, 9 brothers, who are all vying to become king and sovereign of the land, to become the successor of their father, the king. And they are being tested. And throughout this story, they have many different tests. And this story is about one of those. The 9 brothers come upon a well tender, an old crone with wizened skin and bony fingers, and they were all quite averted by her appearance. They, one by one, went to the well because they were thirsty. And they went to the well and they asked the crone, the well tender, if they could have a drink of water. And she said, well, of course, you can have a drink of water, but I would ask for a kiss in return. And one by one, the brothers went to ask, and upon being asked for a kiss, they turned away. They said, absolutely not. I don't want to do that. That doesn't feel like something I want to do. And turned away from her and went away without taking a drink of water. And the last brother comes up to the well and sees the old crone and asks, may I have a drink of water? And she says, of course. And I would just ask for a kiss in return. And this youngest son, so it seems to always be the youngest son or the 9th son, he says, of course, I will kiss you. And not only will I kiss you, but I will lie with you too. And she gives him a drink of water and they kiss and they have really hot sex. And as they're engaging in this like pleasurable reciprocal exchange, she turns into the most beautiful maiden that he's ever seen. And he's totally taken aback. He says, who are you? And she says, I am sovereignty. It's an interesting story. It's a really interesting story. And the way that I've come to understand it through connecting with the work of other storytellers and archaeologists is that she is this crone, which other folks have extrapolated to be inspired by stories of the Cailleach, and intuitively, I agree, because the Cailleach being the tender of the wild and representative of like geological movements of the earth and the land, and being like this ancient, like pre-god being, this giantess, it makes sense that she is also the bestower of sovereignty, because she is the processes, these large scale and also small scale processes of land shifting and changing. And I just wanted to speak briefly to how sovereignty is imagined within this Celtic storied worldview as I've come to interpret it. And that in these other stories, the sovereignty being is often one that is restoring balance, often one that is ensuring the accountability of systems of power, of human systems of power, and rebuilding the balance between the human and non-human world. And also restoring good governance. So there's this relationship between the being that is going to be the sovereign of the land and the agency that is the land, that needs to come into union, into harmony, and into reciprocity, through, and in this story, it happens through pleasure and sexual union. And there's often this role of the sovereignty being drawing their power actually from the other world, from and their systems of remaking balance. There's stories of, you know, pestilence coming upon the land, and like the land becoming barren, as the land turns away. Right, the land is exerting agency by becoming barren and turning away from the human world, and through processes of that agency, being presenced and impacting the human world, you know, they just exert so much power, and they have power that is beyond what the human world could ever have. And that power is always there throughout these stories. It never diminishes and never goes away. Just speaking to like the power that the land holds, within this knowledge system, right? So I think about other sovereignty beings like Maka, also Queen Maeve. Both of these beings, being bestowers of sovereignty and being representations of the land and of sacredity, sacred agency of the land, having some sort of experience of oppression and or like betrayal, right? The trust and the balance being betrayed in some way, and then, you know, the power that is drawn from the other world, that is drawn from the land, coming back and reestablishing that balance.
This reminds me of the work that in Aquarius we do in this place with hag magic. I've talked about in some other videos, where the crone part of this zodiac cycle, of any annual cycle through late winter, goes through some serious crone magic. And this is the work of an air sign of Aquarius that's on the fixed crossroads too, standing opposite to Leo and saying, I reveal you. I reveal your ego. She does this to the brothers, and often the brothers are her son Lu, which is the deity who comes alive in August at Lammas, which is polarity to this IMBOLC well work. And this is the Aquarius Leo axis. This is like her in the story approaching the young man, who's often Lu, like the king of summer, right? The king. It's the ego, it's the sun, S-U-N, and it's the sun, S-O-N. And this is like something in myth a lot that I think we look at with like the brothers and this king kind of journey and these initiations to become king. It's like you're growing from the tiny seed of intuition that is the star, that's the energy guiding Aquarius, that spark in the dark, that intuitive voice, that knowing, that one that's not superficial, that's like not the superficial brother, that's not the one who is crowned king in this story. And it's saying like, what's your intuition informed by? What's the deep truth, that spark in the dark, and the higher guidance of the star? Are you listening to that? Are you aligning with that with your intention? Because what grows from that intention place in an air sign in deep winter, in that Crone viewpoint, has the hairy eyeball it looks at the world with. It's able to look through the hairy eyeball of the Cailleach, that hag, that one-eyed stare. That's the truth. There's one truth. And it's like, I mean, there's many truths. That's the truth. But it's the capital T kind of truth that's not superficial. It's not going to just look at you and be like, no, you're not worth anything. That's like the message of respecting and sovereignty that the fixed signs hold is really interesting, because like this is the well in which births life. So like, is life and birth going to be respected as it grows and forms from this well? Like the reflection in this well that this hag offers is of your ego and what you make of that. And like actual, are you going to be king is not about like the domination colonial story of kingdom. That's not really what we're celebrating here. It's about the ego and the actual sun, and that's what you're shining out from this tiny place that you're aligned with. How deep are you? This hag is going to reveal you. What's your ego like? Do you look at things surface level, or in terms of the land even that you're talking about, in that spirit of the wild that needs to be respected? Are you able to look at the land through all of its seasons? What about the elders? What about crones? What about the dignity and respect that certain people who get marginalized have to mirror and teach and reflect to us all? Right? Aquarius is a lot about the group and the collective, and actually politicizes a lot of things. It's about humanitarianism, social justice. So it will look at the politics of exclusion and inclusion a lot, and look at marginalization politics. And if you're looking at the spirit of the wild, is it being tended, or do we marginalize it? What about the spirit of the wild that's old, that's the crone, that's death, that's late winter, that's ugly, that's not the pretty sparkle summer sunshine party boy or a girl or whatever, it's like that inside, the spirit of the wild isn't that inside. It has them all, but it's like, how do you respect aging? How deep are you? Aquarius hag reveals. And the well at IMBOLC that we wish into will show you your own reflection too. So that's sort of like Aquarius Leo shit, where the Leo might want to look in there and be like, how pretty am I? How pretty are you? And they'll just be revealed, like, you're gonna just see a hag in me. That's all you're gonna get. Bye. You're not
Yeah.
gonna get nourished either, because we can't be shallow. Life will not come back. We will not be crowned king. No. I
Mm,
like this. And I think that 9 is a sovereignty number. Just gonna say that, the 9 brothers thing.
yeah.
It's sort of related to Nana, right? Doesn't she go through 9? But not to
Mm,
broach over to another story. I don't mean disrespect. We're talking about Cailleach, but I just think 9 in terms of the gestation in the womb and these sovereignty numbers,
yeah.
and even on crossroads of the zodiac, they're at like 3, 6, 9, 12. These crossroads, and just saying like, it's just an interesting one. I'll leave it at
Mm,
that. But like when we're talking about what's opposite something, oh wait, no, it would be square. I just think that it does sometimes, maybe initiations work with numbers in interesting ways, and I don't know. It's just saying. I
mm,
like that 9 showing up in a sovereignty story, because Aquarius is really guarding the sovereignty of like, what are our sovereignty and respect dynamics? Yeah, it really
mm,
does that. Hmm.
yeah. And I like that you drew out that this is an initiation, right? This is another type of kayak initiation um, stories where there is, a test of that, of how generous are you going to be in this relationship? How much are you going to be willing to see and listen deeply And in this story, it is the change of the crone into the maiden is so resonant of the transformation of the aged Cailleach to the young maiden that we've
Like
talked about.
Taurus. Yeah.
Yes,
At
exactly.
Beltane, it's like spring coming back, and Taurus at Beltane.
Yeah. And so there's one interpretation that I learned from an archaeologist named John Waddell, who he likens the shift of the maiden from the crone to the maiden as the shift of the land, going from a experience of barrenness, like a wasteland. And this is really common imagery in Celtic story, going from the wasteland to a place of abundance, and youth and fertility, and that shift being facilitated by good governance and right relationship. Yeah.
I like you say relationship too, because Aquarius is an air sign, and they're all initiating us into right relationship in their own way. Aquarius gets like political about it.
Yeah.
I mean, like Libra tends the scales of justice too, but like Aquarius is like, what? It's trying to help you be a better human relationally, and like in terms of your collective relationship to like respect for life.
Yeah.
Taurus is on that crossroads too. It's always saying like, what's your relationship with worth and beauty? And it kind of informs Aquarius's big truth. It's like, that's the maiden is Taurus. It's like, are you gonna get to meet her? Like it depends what your values are. And like Aquarius has to listen to that and step into a little bit more of a relationship in terms of social dynamics and social relationship. It's like being guided by the star. You have to actually be deep and think about the bigger picture, the higher self, and be guided by that and listen to that inner intuition and that inner deep wise place. Aquarius holds that, and that is what the well holds too. So it's like if you have a good relation with worth that like Taurus Venus values are holding down, if you're in communication with that, your Aquarian star is going to be more clear. You're going to have a better relationship with that well. You're actually going to get to engage with the well, because like the brothers who didn't even see the worth, they just looked at beauty wrong. They looked at worth wrong. They missed it, right?
Yeah, they missed it.
They didn't even just drink from the well, and they didn't get to meet spring. So they're not going to be crowned king, which is like this height of summer sun, and ourselves and our egos and our expression flourishing from that well. I just think it's about this worth too. Super cool. And that does inform sovereignty. Every life deserves to live its life, and we deserve to live. We need to live in relationship to service of that. Like respect every life. Every life needs to have its life.
Absolutely. Respecting the sacredity of sovereign beings. Yeah. And that being I love that that's at the heart of the story. It makes me think of the wells, make me think of, the lifeblood of the land, similar to what we were talking about. The Cailleach tends the wellstone that allows the water out. Well, in this story, the crone is there guarding the well, which is another place where water of life is being held, and in service, right? It's like a place of service where the water is being brought up from the other world, and shared and nourishing the community that well tender is serving. And when you turn away the beings that guard the water, when you look at them and think, oh, no, I don't want to be in reciprocity with beings that tend the water. What are you doing? You're denying life. You're denying the agency and sovereignty of the land, and that agency and sovereignty that is emerging of the land, that the Cailleach in this story is enacting the sovereignty of the land, is enacting the wealth of fertility
Hmm.
and and um, and life that lives in the land, the lifeblood.
Yeah, it seems like an interesting like life gate, like a midwife standing at the birth gates. If you
Mm,
look at the energies of the year, when you're coming out of the womb, that's the winter solstice, and then the IMBOLC is the water breaking. You've got this well tender, that's the doula, the midwife part of Bridget's work. And Bridget is honored at IMBOLC for like poetry and midwifery and herbalism and all those things, which I think are really related to this water, this well, this fertility water well.
mm,
Yeah, you gotta respect the midwife. I just like how it's sex positive and it's about like different kinds of beauty. As a queer trans person, that is beautiful about this story, and about I think a lot of like especially feminist stuff is around beauty lessons and the divine feminine, because women are so beautiful. That's part of like Aphrodite, and this like divine feminine is like bumping all of these like raised femme people with that energy, that magic of beauty magic. And it's often a sovereignty lesson around like, do you respect beauty? Like this realm, I think, is Venus's realm, and I think there's so much beauty in it, and we're here to devote ourselves to it. But people
mm,
don't understand that. They think that they're here to consume and to, in a kind of severed relational way. And
mm,
that's part of this illness of whiteness and colonial culture. And so like right now you can see that in the brothers who don't get it. They just miss the beauty. And as a trans person, I can say like I've literally not been seen by most people, and it's literally 8 out of 9 brothers that don't see her. Like that's real. Like we live in a realm that's relational about beauty and value, and yet tons of our beauty is erased, including that of the
mm,
land, including that of old people, including that of like especially older women, or like certain kinds of like things are especially put on women. They have to be this
mm.
kind of beauty, and it's just one, and it's just for these little spring chicken years, and that's such bullshit, because like sexuality just matures and ripens. And like the young brother that gets that, the 1 out of 9, that's so accurate though, because like yeah, I'm literally feel like I've seen and personally experienced beauty be erased. It erases your whole personhood.
Yes.
People don't drink from that creative well. We don't drink from each other's creative well. We miss each other. We have really false colonial narratives in beauty that make it so we just completely don't drink from the well of life. Like Jesus Christ, what happens to those 8 brothers? They don't, nothing. Boring. Like we need to wake the fuck up to, like the diversity of beauty in each other, and actually drink from this well. So I don't know. I like that in this
Oh,
story.
oh, that's so,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
there's like this
it's like
element.
politicizing love. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what
Yeah,
Aquarius does. That I'm all riled up politically. I'm like,
I
this is
love
about
it.
marginalization of beauty, and it's like it's true though.
Yes.
Important. So political.
Mm,
Who does
yeah,
it end up screwing over in the end though? The person who can't see it,
right.
right?
Yeah, they're the ones that are left with the wasteland.
Yeah. Well, what a boring life. Oh, so what? You live in that boring reality. Bye.
Yeah, right.
The one who actually sees and engages and actually stays in relationship with value and beauty and is able to have the deeper, bigger version of that is the one who goes on, in this story, and has like the life, engages with life, drinks from the well of life, has
Right.
a life, gets
Hmm.
to meet the whole life.
Yes.
Because
And come into a place of inner authority, and in this story, like, gets to bring back this, like, this sacred relationship and this balance between the land and the non-human realm and the human realm. Mhm.
yeah, oh my God. not just respecting beauty, but respecting that, valuing the non-human in the earth. When you bring it to that level of sovereignty, it is quite like, I like that the lesson is about sex positivity with the elder. It's very much like Betty White politics, like
Yeah.
Golden Girls, like how she just, oh my God, shocked us all with amazing sexuality.
Yeah. And
But
I really appreciate the way that we're interpreting this story. The other times that I've told this story, people are like, "Oh, the hag is like being manipulative," and like, I'm like, "No, you don't get it. The land is abundance, and like we see it and choose it, or we turn away from it because it's offering some truth or like a witness back that we're not ready for, or we don't see the value in."
well, people vilify things that are different.
Right.
People are literally repelled by them. They're afraid of them. These people that you're talking about that felt the hag was manipulative, I'm curious because it's true. She tests you with that bit of glamour, right? Her
Mhm.
hag old lady glamour. She's going to hold up maybe what you would think of as ugly. I mean, right? She had like bushy eyebrows and she
Oh,
was like, I guess you told the story out loud. I just read one where she was described and she's like, blah. I think that's cool though. I'm queer. I love like different kinds of beauty. And I just like the old person kinds of like valuing that. But I think it's such an interesting thing to feel threatened by that.
mm, by
And was
different.
she manipulative?
Mm,
I
mm,
also think that we go through survival instincts when we are approached with that, which is different. A lot of people react from a survival instinct place that's keeps them pretty narrow in their version of their, do I want to interact with this person or no? People will just reject something because it's like, ew, no. And like out of fear.
right.
Yeah.
It's like the colonial ick factor.
Mhm.
Like all the different ways that we've been socialized to like be a find like to react with disgust to things that are different, or like react with aversion to things that don't fit within our culture's very narrow views of what is beautiful and what is worthy of our attention and our reciprocal relationship.
Or even what's scary or not. Because, like, if you approach this well and you're hungry and you've gone through a desolate land and you show up and there's an old woman there and she not only wants to give you a drink, she wants to make out with you and roll around, get
Have a
sexy,
romp. Yeah.
have a sexy romp. Okay, so would you be like, wow, it's the lucky day jackpot? Or would you be like, she's trying to manipulate me? She's ugly? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can feel like in the heart level of
Yeah.
these characters, one's coming out of fear and judgment, one's coming out of positivity and celebration of life and curiosity and just kind of like this like, oh, wow,
Mhm.
lucky me. Body, mind, and spirit. I'm getting nourished today. Like the other
Yeah.
one, like I'm afraid, I don't trust that I'm being screwed over. And it's like if you look at how do we tend our relationship with the land, with life, with the sacred waters of life, with life, anything life, like people are like we do swing wildly like this inside of ourselves in terms of our relationships. It's like, are we acting out of like a fear, kind of no, ick, reject, I'm surviving based on judging and separating myself from that thing I'm afraid of and projecting shit onto, or am I surviving by being curious and open and really saying yes to life? There's just this, I like that lesson. I like it.
Me too.
Maybe she's also the manipulation part is witchy. Like, are you open to something being witchy and like good for you in that way, even though it's a bit like weird? Relationship with weird. I love weird, but like some people just immediately shut it down. Well, we've been colonized away from like witchcraft and things that are magical, shapeshifty, like have layers. We need
Mhm.
to reacquaint ourselves with that. I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I think also the water is a representation of power, right? Like she has power because she is the water, and she is the giver of water and the holder of life, and she has that power because she is it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So witchy. It's like
Yeah.
beautiful. When you really think about it, you're like, whoa. The ugly part in this story is so amazing because actually she's just like beautiful. She's a human manifestation of the well itself. And
Yeah.
it's like, wow.
Yeah. And I like to like shift it to like I like the way that you Otis, you frame it like, let's look at these stories as if they're dreams, right? And all the beings within the dream are like parts of ourself that are interacting. And so,
Oh
like,
yeah.
what are the parts of the self that hold that deep well of like abundance and
Mm.
sovereignty and inner authority? And then what are the parts that are coming up to that and being like, ew, right? Or
Right? Denying life. No, reject.
yeah.
Very ugly. Oh, I put off by that. Bye. Shut it down.
And then where are the pathways to have like pleasurable, like hot connection with those parts of ourselves that then flourish into like balance and good governance and all these beautiful like explosions of fertility and wellness. Mhm.
We all have that old, tired, craggy self, especially in late winter. It's a really intense time right now. Usually there's like a fundraiser for mental health right now. It's like the ugly, hard part of us right now. In
Mm,
this time of late winter, we were all like, oh, we've been snowed in for days. We're feeling a little kind of weird. Like maybe it's the ugly part of ourselves too. And then it's the part where creative stuff is stirring. And so this interface is funny because it's like, yeah, how much are you going to respect this sort of abundance of life and sexiness and everything and like that, which when you can love all your parts and like all the kind of places that life brings you, including these maybe hard ugly ones, like you could equate it with like the entire era of the end of life, with a lot of people fear and struggle with the old part. But it's like, what if we get practiced every year through the zodiac at loving all our parts? By the time we're old, we're gonna be having the best sex ever.
yeah.
Like we need to cultivate a wider relationship with like all our parts. I think this initiator is really cool because if you integrate that, you can integrate all these sort of weird, ugly, harsh places in you that you get to. And often love, in terms of initiators with the air signs in relationship, like to be initiated into this radical inclusion with self and other makes for healthy relationships. This makes a better community, not just a community in terms of we all treat each other better, but like in the relationship with ourselves and other people, like this is a fundamental value set that informs our own sovereignty. That means we
Mm,
can be as creative and radically inclusive with our own authenticity. We don't have to be motivated by fear of like showing that, and we don't miss it in other people. you know
mm,
Let
mm,
the well springs run. Don't stop the creative life force. It's cool, and it's like it's interesting because it is this well tender that really is showing this like lesson of like radical inclusion of all the hard
mm.
parts alongside that which is, yeah, the spring chicken that's reborn, that's just a perfect little baby. When spring comes back and it's all pretty again, like, yeah, sure, easy love, but like, what about all of our parts? What about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Mm,
it.
yeah. Hmm. Well,
I think it's complicating beauty. It's important.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's complicating love, and it's complicating what sovereignty is, from
Yes.
my perspective. Yeah. And what it looks like to respect sovereignty. I think the story offers like a lot of guidance to inform like political and ethical commitments in terms of relating to land and the water protectors, like the indigenous folks of the land that are literally protecting water. How do we respond when we come to the people who are respecting the water that we rely on as like human beings and all of the ecology that relies on the water?
Yeah.
And also, yeah, from that perspective,
God.
the land, right? And how is the land exerting agency? I love the narratives that are emerging in Indigenous art and expression that are like, Indigenous people are the sovereignty of the land and the agency of the land responding to oppression and to destruction.
I love that too, and I love when the waters showed up. People
Mm,
started to get spiritual in the activism, and it not started to, it always has been Indigenous front lines. But this prayer with water became these slogans of water is life. And we're
mm,
not water protesters, we're water protectors. And just
yeah,
reframes that were just incredible. And working with the sacred fire too. Last year
mm,
in IMBOLC season, there was the whole thing with the sacred fire protecting water just massively being held down.
mm,
And like, I just feel like there's this beautiful like way that these elements kind of rise up in these front lines and just like, yes, claiming them is a decolonization in itself.
mm.
We
Yeah.
are that, yeah.
Mhm. And I just want to clarify that it's not always about union through sex, obviously, but like what the heart and the meat of the story I feel is the reciprocity and like
It's
how
the
are we
consent. It's like,
it's the
yes,
consent and the yes
yes,
and the reciprocity, the relating well with one another. The
yeah, being fully able to meet.
yeah. Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
Not distance, just like fully able to be like, yes,
Hmm.
yes, life.
Yeah.
We have to say yes to life.
Mm,
The sacred well is that moment too. Even in Christianity, there was this usurp of Bridget at Bridget's Day, which then became Groundhog's Day too, and different things like around February 1st, which was traditionally IMBOLC in Celtic holidays. But this well moment, when you approach this well, it got usurped because it was so strong at St. Bridget's Day, and people still devote to her on that day and at the sacred fire and the sacred well, because it's like this practice you have to do in late winter after this winter solstice. You're starting again.
mm,
Oh God. Late January, early February, this is the time where you approach that well and you have to face choosing life. You have to say yes.
yeah.
Yeah, that reciprocity, you have to be able to show up for your part in that, you know,
Mhm.
to like make something harvestable in late summer, you know, in August, which is like that axis. It's like what you're sending out here in the polarity sense is going to arrive in August. So this Imbolc Lammas Aquarius Leo axis, it's like this conversation, like the Aquarius new moon in this time of Imbolc is going to grow into this full sun in August. And it's just a harvest in the relationship between your intention in air in Aquarius and then what you harvest later in terms of like yourself and
Mm,
like your fire. But it's important that we say yes to life.
yeah. And say yes to inner sovereignty and inner authority and coming into that process of like coming into right sizeness and to come and be committed to the processes of coming into good relationship with other sovereign beings and agencies that we're interacting with. And that being like a ever shifting horizon, right? It's this process of becoming um, and yeah, continuing to be accountable and learn. Yeah.
I like there's a wise elder kind of offering a learning at this well, right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
even like traditional cultures, like you're talking about indigenous front lines, they have such a connection to elders and to the advice and counsel of white elders. It's informing the culture and how
Mhm.
people act and think and treat one another and have values. And so there's values in indigenous frontline leadership all over the world that are valuing things that aren't seen as valuable. Like maybe it's
Mm.
not this pretty shiny mall with all the name brands and drive through 24-hour. Like it's like not the candy, it's maybe not the pretty spring chicken or whatever that you're just gonna be like, yes, oh fun life. Ah. But like this wise counsel elder kind of truth holds down that which sometimes you forget to remember about, like saying yes to life or honoring about life, is the wise counsel at the well when the well is maybe looking like that. Maybe it looks like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of our wise self has a deep relationship with cultures that go back with tending strong elder counsel, strong
Mm.
relationship with the wise one inside, because you're not going to just steamroller over and just forget to value things that in that way. We're able to see their value, you know.
Yeah, it's a shift of mindset. It's
Yeah.
that the story speaks to, for sure. And the shift of values. Hmm. Deciding what's important. Yeah. Hmm. Well, out of this, do we have any invitations for folks who are listening to engage with the story and with the astrology of this time?
This is a time for intention setting and approaching the well and seeing what it's offering you and what you are saying yes to, what you're saying no to. And
Mm.
it might be a cool little meditation practice for people. A little journal thing, right? Draw pictures. You can journal however you want to, but I think it's important to really like reflect on what is the well offering you? What is the well tender offering you? The initiator at the well, the one that wants to transform you and give you life. Are you saying yes to life? Are you scared? What's coming out of the well? Do a little scribe work. Have a little bowl of water that's the well. Could be anything. And you just sit over it and see what visions come.
Mm. Beautiful.
Think about people in your life that are maybe that hag, that wise one. Who's your initiators? What kind of reactions are you having to like the medicine showing up and making offerings to you? What kind of visions are you having, intentions for what's going to go forward and grow this year
Mm.
as the light returns?
Mhm. I love that. And I would also add, like, as an everyday practice of magic, um, making visible the relationships that we engage in constantly, then with the non-human world or with, other sovereign beings. Like, what are the qualities of relationship that we are tending? Which ones, like, map them out, figure out which ones are and are showing up right now, and and presence with the qualities of which we are showing up in those relationships, just in a day-to-day way, um, with the birds that you see outside your window, or the way that you address the water as it comes from the tap that came from headwaters, right? That came from lands and and wells, springs, on the land in which you actually live, and feeling into gratitude, I think too, is really important, and trying to find ways to be in reciprocity with the non-human world, and also with the beings that are protecting the non-human world. And perhaps in the video description, we'll put some Indigenous front lines who are protecting water, that you can check out and support if you have the means to.
Mm-hmm. I think there's this practice too of cultivating our inner spark in the dark. I like to call it the reason you get out of bed in the morning. It's
Yeah.
also that inner crush that makes you kind of wet, right? That gets your waters rushing, gets your quickening going.
Mm.
Like, especially now when we are listening to what is that which gets me out of bed in the morning? What is the spark in the dark? It's the sacred well and the sacred fire together. That is your fire. How are you tending that sacred fire that is sex, that is passion, that is desire, that is that kind of way you are that awake in your life?
Mhm.
We need to cultivate it. We can't just like shut down or go to sleep around this. This is like the time of year when it starts to wake in. And so like yeah, like cultivating our yes, our spark.
Our sovereignty in order to know what is a yes and what is, yeah. And that's, I think that sovereignty work and that like relationship to pleasure feels really connected for me. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And it can be a diversity of things.
Yes.
Oh my God, what we know as queers about that. It's like such a windy, interesting, fabulous road. We get to end up having such a diverse experience with pleasure and the erotic. And especially as a witch and an animist, I really appreciate how I feel very moved in energetic ways in my embodiment with nature. That's what magic is. It's like energy moving. So
Mm.
my eros and my eroticism extends into just generally being moved by art, by dancing, by like the wind and trees. And it's like a big relationship. It's expansive. Like, what are we in relationship with that's non-human? Like, I love that invitation because it's literally with music, with this
And
weather, you know,
the eros
with
of
beauty,
relating to nature. Yeah. I love
empathic
that.
relationship,
Mm.
embodied relationship. Because what comes
Mm.
back in the spring is Taurus. It's like your senses come back. So, like, how are you the midwife to that embodiment where all your senses are awake, which is going to be at Beltane at the other queer crossroads direction? But it's like this is in conversation with now, you
Mm.
know? Yeah,
Cool.
coming alive. Yeah.
So good. Oh, so yummy.
Yeah, we're gonna keep exploring more of these stories. We're starting with this time of year because we love IMBOLC and this sacred well with which the creative energies and everything takes form and flows from here, this source. And we're gonna keep on rolling into all the astrological signs throughout the zodiac this year. Pisces just started today. Actually, the sun just went into Pisces this morning, and so we're gonna be doing some work with the fish, probably the salmon of knowledge. We're gonna do that. We're moving on to Patreon, and we're gonna go through every sign. And I'm really excited for this collaboration because I think we're gonna involve some really interesting information and content, including pop culture, politics, art. Like really good prompts and ways to engage with this material of story and star, and just check us out at Queer Directions and Revolutionary Astrology on Instagram and online, and on Patreon, Queer Directions at Patreon, if you want to do more work with this.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the description below so you can take a look. And there's 3 different tiers. There's a low income tier. If you're not experiencing financial difficulty, there's a tier for you. And then if you want to have a little bit of a deeper dive and kind of treat this more like a course, where you get an opportunity to ask questions and engage with both of us, and to deepen
And the
your,
learning group, right? The
yeah,
yes.
exactly. And with the other folks who are learning to create this kind of like learning circle, there's an option for that as well, based on what level of engagement you're looking for and what financial means you have right now. Yeah, it's exciting.
It's gonna be real good.
Amazing. So we look forward to connecting with all y'all in March. We'll be over on Patreon. And thank you so much for joining us for this January IMBOLC story series. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Mhm.
All right. Bye. What do we want?